Hello, my name is Christian Dechoudens, and I am a UMass Lowell student, currently doing a project interviewing labor union leaders. And here's my guest, Ethan Snow from Unite Here. How's it going, Ethan?
Good, how's it going?
Pretty good. I just have a few questions here, so why don't you just get started right away? First question is, what is the New England Joint Board Unite Here?
Yeah, so I work for the New England Joint Board. We are an affiliate of Unite Here, which is a international union that represents workers across the United States and Canada, mainly in the hospitality industry, food service, hotels, casinos, airports. My affiliate of Unite Here is called the New England Joint Board, which is it is a local branch, basically, of Unite Here in New England and in New York City. We represent about 10,000 workers from Maine all the way down to New York City in the industries that Unite Here typically represents, but then also some other industries that where we represent workers, across the region. So we're a labor union. We represent mostly immigrant workers, people of color, and women. And our main industries are food service at colleges and universities, industrial laundries, warehouses, textile and needle trades, and manufacturing.
Okay. So how long has it been around?
The New England Joint Board?
Yeah.
Yeah, the New England Joint Board has only been around for about maybe 15 years. It was created after 3 different joint boards merged together, representing different parts of New England.
Okay.
So there was one from Connecticut that represented mostly textile workers, one from Massachusetts that represented men's clothing workers, and then one also from Massachusetts that represented women's clothing workers. They combined to create the New England Joint Board and combined all of their industries together, and that's the union that we have today.
Oh, that sounds amazing. And how did you get involved with this group?
I am a 3rd generation union member, so my father was in the labor unions and worked his whole career as a union representative, and my grandfather also was a union member. And when I went to UMass Lowell as an undergrad, I started to get involved in political science and a little bit into what my father did and my grandfather did. And when I further went through grad school here at UMass Lowell, I became really interested in the textile workers unions, which were very big here in the Merrimack Valley. And as part of that, part of my work in grad school, I kind of went around giving talks about the textile workers' history in Lawrence and in Lowell. And as part of that, I was asked to interview at the New England Joint Board, which is the last textile workers union, and was hired in 2012.
2012? All right.
Yep.
So what essentially is your role there?
So my title is Chief of Staff and Political Director with the New England Joint Board. And so part of what that entails is I help the top officer of the union run the day-to-day operations of the union. So negotiating collective bargaining agreements with employers, settling issues at the different workplaces, managing the health and medical insurance funds, the pension and retirement funds, all the different benefits that our members get, and also interacting with different community groups when we're working on campaigns, and basically running the operations of the union alongside the top officer in his office. And then the political director side, I run all the politics for the union, which means working to pass different legislation that would be beneficial to our members, both in the state level, on the city level, and on the federal level, and then helping to run political campaigns for people who are running for office who we've endorsed, because either they have vowed to support working people or they've vowed to support some of the industries that we represent. So it's a lot of responsibilities under one title, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, sounds pretty interesting though. So what would be the benefits of joining this union?
We have a whole list of benefits. Fundamentally, though, whenever you join a union, whether it's the New England Joint Board, Unite Here, or any other union, the steel workers, the auto workers, any union, what you get is job security, so you can't be fired right away without just cause. You get the benefits of a contract that protects you at work, which outlines your wages, your hours, your working conditions, and then most unions negotiate for fringe benefits, so health insurance, retirement, pensions, and all kinds of insurance. So one of the things that we do particularly well is provide good quality, affordable health insurance for our members, which is becoming a harder and harder thing to find as a worker. And also to provide, through negotiations with the workers' employers, retirement plans so that workers can have, a retirement, when they get to a certain age. So those are some of the major benefits, in addition to things like health and safety in the workplace, rules around how work is done, and how it's managed in some of the different facilities. There's a whole slew, pretty much. So
the benefits. All right. Were there any obstacles that were in your way getting to where you are now?
I think being a young person in the labor movement can be challenging. I think breaking into it can be challenging. Obviously, I came from a family that's been involved in the labor movement for many years, so that helped. But I think sometimes as a young person, being in the staff of a union, you can be seen as not experienced, or you don't know exactly what you're doing. But I'm fortunate because I have a boss in an organization that really values teaching and allowing people to grow and become future leaders of the labor movement. So yeah, I would say that. But I've been very fortunate, very lucky. So.
Are there any changes that you would make if you could?
There's a lot of changes I would make. It's very difficult to be a union member in these times. It's very hard to operate a union in these times where it seems like more and more employers and the major corporations in the country are dictating what's happening, in society. And what I would change is to try and change the balance so that corporations don't have all the power, but workers also share some of that power, and that they're on an equal level with one another. That's obviously a really hard thing to do, but it's something that we try to do every day on a small scale.
Tell me about a project or accomplishment that you consider the most significant in your career.
In my career, I guess one of the major things for us was electing Elizabeth Warren as senator from Massachusetts. She's been an outspoken advocate for workers and for unions in particular. And that wasn't easy. Electing her was a really difficult election, and but overall, I think it has really paid off. She's been our best advocate in the Senate and nationwide. She's been really fighting for workers, for immigrants, for people of color, and it's important that we have more of those people, because the other side is always attacking unions and trying to limit our power. So to have people like her and to be able to elect people like her is really important.
What motivates you as a union representative?
What motivates me, I'd say, just being with workers every day, whether they're working in a factory that makes suits, or they're working in a cafeteria serving students like you. Being with them, being on the floor, being in the workplaces, seeing what they deal with every day and trying to advocate for them, and knowing that they really look to their union to help them in life and to help them secure better opportunities for themselves and for their families, and knowing that they need it so badly and that more and more workers need unions, motivates me every day to keep the work up, because it's not easy. So being in touch with the real rank and file workers gives me that inspiration.
Yeah, that's amazing. What would you say is the most critical aspect of your job?
The most critical aspect would probably be just the day-to-day actual representing workers. So when they have a grievance against their employer because the employer has breached a contract, and then negotiating with the employer for a new contract or a first-time contract. For example, we just brought the food service workers at UMass Lowell into our union, and we're negotiating with Aramark for a first contract that would basically dictate the wages that those workers are paid, the working conditions that they work under, and the hours that they work. That's really important, because then it sets the bar for those workers, how they're treated at work, what their benefits are, and basically just how their work is dictated. So I think negotiating good contracts that allow people wage increases, good affordable health insurance, quality health insurance, a retirement that they can plan on to retire with dignity at a certain age. That's probably the most critical work of the union, is to provide those benefits to members and to make sure that that their union's working for them.
Okay. So when you guys are working on multiple projects, how do you prioritize you guys' work?
That's a tough question, because we're always grappling with that, because we represent 10,000 different workers in 7 states, and they all have their own issues, and about 80 different employers, and they all have their own issues in probably 6 or 7 industries, and each industry has its own issue. So it's hard. So sometimes we feel like we're just trying to respond and jumping on different fires that pop up to try and put them out and make sure that everything is good. So it's hard, because some of the things that unions need to be doing and is critical for unions to be doing is to organize new non-union workers into the union in order to grow the union and to grow the labor movement. And so sometimes that takes a back seat, because the members that you currently have in the union need those things like the contract to be negotiated. They need their grievances to be filed against the employer. They need their benefits to be handled. So when you've got so many of those members all demanding those services, and with very limited resources that the union has, it's hard to be able to keep that balance, but I think we've done a good job. So we always negotiate our contracts on time. They're good contracts. The members all enjoy them, and they overwhelmingly vote to accept them. And at the same time, we're still able to organize new workers into the union. So UMass Lowell, we just organized those workers, Springfield College, Western New England University, Hampshire College. So we're working really hard and able as best as we can to keep that balance, but every day it's a struggle.
So what happens when a worker comes to you guys and says their contract has been violated by their employers?
Yeah, so when a worker believes that the contract has been violated, they will go to what's called the shop steward.
Okay.
And that's someone who is a coworker of theirs who has been designated by the union to act as the first line of defense for the union. So they go to the steward and they say, I believe that the employer broke this part of the contract. And the steward will look at the contract, determine if they have, and then if they have, they, along with that worker, will file a grievance in writing saying, the employer broke this part of the contract and here's what we want them to do to make it better, to make it right. And then we go through that process. We meet with the company, we tell them what happened and why they should make it right. And the employer doesn't always agree, and so we go through steps in the process, each time involving more and more people and having meetings to basically make our case. It's almost like a legal action where we're making our case, they're making their case, and we try to come to some compromise. If we don't come to a compromise, then it goes to the final step where an impartial person will come in called an arbitrator, and they'll decide one way or the other, and then the issue is settled. We're pretty good, though, at settling issues and getting a compromise or getting something fixed before we have to go to that last step. We're the only part of Unite here that represents manufacturing workers and hospitality workers. The rest of the country, the affiliates of Unite here represent only hospitality workers. So some of the places that we're big are like Atlantic City and Las Vegas, where we represent like 70,000 casino workers, hotel housekeepers. We represent many of the major airports where people are serving food and working on the airplanes, in the catering. Colleges and universities all over the place. Many hotels in major cities, and university food service, obviously. We do a lot of that as well, but we actually originally we come from a different union than Unite Here, and we joined Unite Here in the early 2000s. And so our history is we actually came from the garment, the needle trades, clothing, and textile workers, which were big in this area in all the factories. And so we still have some of that work, some of those workers. But when we joined Unite Here and merged together, we added some of their industries. So like, for example, when there are casinos built soon in Massachusetts, those workers will become our members. So in Springfield, there'll be a casino. In Everett, there'll be a casino. And those workers will become our members, in addition to, food service workers across the state too.
So what is the process of trying to get a contract set up with an employer?
Yeah, so usually what we do is we negotiate a contract that lasts for about 3 years. So every 3 years or so, we try to renew that contract and negotiate more benefits. So what happens is we develop a committee of workers in the workplace, and that committee does the actual negotiation with their boss, and we're there to facilitate it. So the committee will be representative of the whole workplace. So you try to get someone from each shift, you try to get someone from each ethnic group, each language group, and each department within the workplace on that committee. And what we do is we meet together as the committee, not with the company yet, but just as the committee, to create proposals to say, this is what we want added to the contract, or this is what we want new. to the contract. We want, raises, we want more break time, we want more vacation or more holidays. So we come up with those proposals, and then we sit down with the company. The company has their own committee, and we sit on opposite sides of the room and we give them our proposals. Sometimes they give us their proposals. Sometimes they want things to change in the contract. And then we go back and forth. So, we ask for maybe, $2 an hour raise, and they say, no, we can't do $2. Maybe we can do 50 cents. And then we say, well, let's do $1. And we try to meet somewhere in the middle.
Okay.
And then once we agree on those things, we come up with basically a tentative contract.
Okay.
So once we agree, it's not a contract until all of our members in that workplace vote to approve it.
Okay.
So once we have an agreement, a tentative agreement, we go to the members in the workplace and we say, here's the agreement that the company wants to give us, that we got, that we negotiated. What do you think about it? And they have the chance to either vote yes to accept it and place it in the contract, and usually it's another 3 years of a contract, or they can vote no if they believe that it's not a good deal from the company.
Okay.
And then when they vote no, we either can go back to the employer and say, we need more. This isn't good enough. You need to help us, get to where we want to be. Or we can take action up to and including a strike if we believe that the employer is not going to move and is not going to agree to what we need or what we want. Then we can strike, but that's a last resort.
That's the last strike. So what are some recent strikes that have happened?
We actually haven't had strikes, fortunately, in a long time, probably 15 years. Strikes are really kind of, like I said, they're a last resort, and when you're out on strike, you're not working, so you're not getting paid. Mm-hmm. And you have to be on strike, outside, on the picket line, walking around in front of the building all day, all night. And so it's a really hard thing. And a lot of times the employer has a lot of different tricks to be able to get around a strike and still operate. Strikes are only used when they're absolutely necessary, and I think the fact that we haven't had a strike is good because it means that we're able to negotiate contracts and get the contracts that people want and get the things that they need without getting into major battles. We have had strikes across the country with other affiliates of Unite Here. There was one in Boston in Cambridge this past fall at Harvard University. That was a successful strike where that part of Unite Here, that local of Unite Here, won that strike. And there have been strikes at other employers across the country. We've been fortunate not to have to go on strike, but it's always something that's in the tool belt if we need to use it.
Yeah. So how do you guys recruit other people to become members of Unite Here?
Yeah, it's a long process. Most often, the workers will reach out to us and say, "Hey, we want a union." And then sometimes we'll go to a workplace and talk to the workers and find out if they want a union. But most often, people call us up and say, hey, we really need a union here. The working conditions are really bad. We need the union. And then what we do is we set up a meeting with that worker, and we have a long plan and long campaign with strategy to bring everybody together to form the union. And so that can take a number of different forms. So usually what we do is we try to get in a workplace, we try to get a majority of the workers to say, yes, I want the union. And once we get that majority, we go to the employer, we go to the boss, the company, and we say, a majority of your workers want the union. And sometimes they say, okay, you can have the union and we'll sit down and negotiate a contract. And other times they say, no, we're not going to recognize that. And so if they say no, what we do is we go to an election, and people vote, basically, on whether they want the union or not. And the government supervises that election. And so then if they vote, majority say, yes, we want the union, then we have the union, and then we start to sit down with the company to negotiate for a contract.
Okay.
So it's a long process where we have to sign everybody up and we have to talk to people. Sometimes they have different perceptions about what a union is and why they should or should not have one. And we have to break through that and really get people to believe in the union, and get everybody together, standing together with one voice. And that can be really hard and a long process. So it takes a long time to organize.
Okay. So do you have people that once they join a union decide that they don't like the conditions, like still, and like decide to leave the union? Does that ever happen?
Yeah, I mean, very, very rarely. Usually we're able to make good improvements to the working conditions, but workers in the United States do have the option not to have a union, and they have to go through a similar process to vote not to have the union. But 99% of the time, we're able to make a positive impact in their working conditions, in their working life, and in their lives overall. So it's not something that is common, really.
Okay. That's all the time we have for now. Thank you very much for tuning in, and this is Ethan Snow from Unite Here. Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thanks for all the information.
You're welcome.